And you are live on YouTube.
Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome.
Okay, I will call our meeting number 6, according to Ethan, meeting to order. Number 6. I'm not sure why we keep putting those on there. Is there some reason for that?
Which meeting? It's just general reference. So if we have meeting materials, we want to go back to something we discussed
Say.
previously.
Okay.
Just have a pile of papers in front of us.
Good. So thanks everybody for coming. I know this is well, it seems like everyone's always busy, but we have a few people who are not able to make it, but it looks like I'm glad you're here today, Ray, and the rest of the committee members. I'm not sure where my esteemed co-chair is. Hopefully he'll join us soon. I see his box on Zoom, but his chair is empty. For anyone out there in the public, I'm Claudia Bramer, the co-chair of the ARPA committee. And we have I'm going to say a fairly short agenda today. I'd like to get us completed well before 5 o'clock this time, so nobody gets locked out of their offices. This isn't something we normally do, but I see that there are members of the public here. If you guys want to say something to the committee, I'd be happy to hear from you, unless there's any objections from the committee members to go ahead. We do have a presentation from our public speakers later in the agenda, if you guys can stay. Lynn, I'm sorry, I didn't get to say hi to you. So anybody who wants to go up, you can go now. Yeah, up there.
My name is Stephen Matt, and I've been a member of this community for many years. Graduated from Glens Falls High School in 1968, which is a while ago. And actually, I'm here today to talk about the use of some of the funds that we are getting and the quality of life. As you well know, housing prices have gone up substantially to the tune of about $50,000 for even a starter today. And we're bringing the cost of housing well beyond that of what I call your teens income individuals. People are making $15, $16, $17, $18, $19 an hour. And what I would like to be able to do, or see if it's possible to do, it would be to take approximately 5% and utilize that money, not spend that money as such, to be able to process throughout the county in various areas a true starter homes that are built on a slab, that are under 1,000 square feet, 2-bedroom, 1 bath. And they could be either for that young couple with income limitations to be able to actually truly be able to get into home and meet the American dream, or at least to start it on that process, but also for seniors who can simply not afford to go into a number of these different places, but need a place to go to that is on a single floor, that's easy to maintain and take care of. And I think of over a period of years, we could build a number of these things through a number of the different in our area. Okay, and really change the outlook of many individuals, not just the quality of life, but keeping them off of the DSS rolls and making it safer for some of our seniors, which unfortunately today, I don't know about yourselves, but I know of 2 different individuals who have died falling downstairs, either to their cellar, to their washer and dryer, or downstairs, period, going back into their living space from their bedrooms, let alone broken arms, ankles, backs, necks, and everything else. And as well as our young people, and giving them a genuine hope and making our county one of the few counties in this country where the American dream is still possible for those people making service industry monies. I have a few ideas on it. I won't expand on it because you want to be out of here by 5 o'clock. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about those, how we would go about doing stuff like that. And thank you for the time.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. It is an important topic for sure. Housing is something that we identified through the public survey responses, and we do have one of our priority areas is housing. So we do have that identified, and we are going to at some point have to start bringing in some industry experts to talk to us. I think that's generally what the plan of attack here is that now we've got our areas of priority, and we want to start bringing in people who will talk to us about the needs and how we respond to those needs and what are some specific project proposals and ideas to actually address the needs that have arisen as a result of COVID. With that, we're going to have more discussion about that under number 2 for our agenda today. But so I don't get too out of order, Ethan, do you want to give us updates at housekeeping on the website?
Yeah, just a
Issue?
quick 2 seconds on this. You know, throughout the process, we talked about transparency and public input. Don Lehman has made another effort at updating our webpage. So now, instead of just some boilerplate information, we've got proceedings of the meetings, some of the draft materials that we've been discussing. So it's a little bit more interactive and informative. And that we're going to keep that updated.
I need it.
And he's been able to cross promote that through some of the other social media channels that the county uses. And I think Don is online. I don't know if he wants to chip in on anything with this, but I do know that he's able to look at like analytics and watch how many people have interacted with the materials that are being posted about ARPA. So we've sort of got our online presence enhanced. But that's it. Unless Don, you got anything to add there?
Hi, Ethan. Hi, everybody. No, nothing really to add. I mean, we're going to try and do a little bit to keep that webpage updated with, proceedings from each meeting as to what was accomplished, and then what the full board does with the recommendations. And any suggestions, just please let me know and let Ethan know, and we'll do what we can do.
Thanks, Don. Any discussion or suggestions from the committee members? Okay, thanks, Ethan, for getting that updated and going. On number 2, review of the draft spending plan. So this is, Wayne, you want to talk about this? This is basically, if you look in the packet, your pages 3, 4, and 5, I think what Wayne has done is plugged in some of the things that we've already spent, which is mostly item A.
Right.
And obviously Countryside was a big one. And then the 30,000 for the library, the things that are coming to the top of my head. But you want to talk about how you have this organized and what the different colors mean?
Yeah, I'm trying to get.
I guess that was one thing. The project,
All right, I want to use this. All right.
on the project submission site that was put out there to the public for anyone to submit ideas, it did say all over that, these are just ideas. This does not guarantee you're going to get funding. Because I think what you'll see, and Wayne, hopefully you can cover this, is the dollar amount of the requests versus what we have in funds to allocate.
Right, and Ryan was so kind to point out some of my errors that I did here. I've missed a couple zeros, my eyes are getting old, and there wasn't commas in there, so some of the numbers are a little short. But this is basically a spreadsheet. The items in black are things that we've already talked about in what's called the set-asides. Last meeting, there were items in red that we added to some of these set-asides. I know those discussion whether there was actually a set-aside. I believe there was. The column with the green items in it are those that Claudia referred to that came in through the online solicitation process. Those sheets have been included. That's why there was 68 sheets in the agenda package. I did cross-reference those. You'll see the numbers of their line items in the upper right-hand corner of all those sheets. A lot of people submitted ideas without a dollar amount. Some of the things that we have to remember is that we can't do debt service. So I think the Lake George Village sewer, whoever put that in, that's all debt service. So I don't think that's something that we can entertain. The Lake George supervisor may have a different opinion. We'll talk about that. I didn't put that in there. So again, there's when you look at it, we have basically $10,726,364 that has not been committed so far. The request total $35 million. So there's a little disparity there. Again, though, if you take out the 20 million for Lake George, it still leaves you 15 million against 10 million available. And a lot of the items that were submitted had good ideas. There were no dollars assigned to those by the person who, or people who submitted the request. So some of those I think are things that are beyond the scope of this committee, but they were submitted, so I included them, and we can weed through those as we see fit as we get to them. Some of these are maybe better referred to the city of Glens Falls because they're city of Glens Falls specific actions that don't have a county-wide impact, sidewalks on certain streets. So those are considerations for the committee. Let's see, there will be continuous updates to this. And I will put the revised date as you see up in the upper left-hand corner as we revise, and I do quality control checks based on Ryan's notes. I think when you look at it, there's of that 35 million, there's probably another 3 million that I forgot to add some zeros in somewhere along the line. So there's probably 40 million that are the total requests. And as I said, I'll update this. Ryan has agreed to provide me his edits, so we'll go from there.
Well, that's why we have draft all over it, right?
Exactly.
And it's here for discussion, and we're going to keep looking at it and keep moving forward. I wasn't anticipating any decisions today on any of the items. It's good to have somebody keeping track of all of this stuff in one spot. And, we're not weeding out any of the ideas yet. They're all things that people threw out there for us to consider, and I think it's great. And I appreciate that you went through all the project ideas that were submitted. Wayne put them in categories, basically matching what we said were our priority areas. So like immediate response needs is a category, and you'll see some of the projects there. And then, for instance, assist vulnerable populations, and that has the project ideas behind it for those. There were a couple I disagreed with Wayne's categorization, but I think it's not a big deal into which bucket we put it right at this minute.
Right.
And I do want to mention too that Ethan has his name on a bunch of these. These are not all Ethan's ideas, the ones that I think, how did you get those? Maybe an email or something, and so you put them into the
Yeah, there's
website?
been a few phone conversations, and there was another form that we were using before. Yeah, any of the ideas that aren't great are not mine. It's got my name on it. It's great. It's definitely something I cooked up on my own. I take full credit for it.
Okay, good.
But yeah, there's actually, and you'll notice too on the first page here, it was 3/24 was the last time that we updated this project list. So there may be more submissions coming on through the internet since 3/24. So we're half a week after that.
Right. Okay. Does anybody have any discussion on the spreadsheet there, or any questions for Wayne about what's what?
So
Okay.
You're not
Yeah.
going to hurt my feelings now.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
I think so the idea behind this, I think organizing it this way was to show some form of continuity, because I know at one point we had showed that that draft spending plan that Wayne had just thrown out there for consideration, and it wasn't organized around these priority areas that we identified. So now here's some sort of continuity. It's like, hey, this is what we heard from the community survey, from stakeholders, from the committee. And then we're filtering that into these spending categories, and we can start looking at the big ballpark numbers on that. And so as we continue to get project ideas, it's like, all right, what categories it fit into? What are the other projects in that category? Can they partner? Are they duplicative? And then we can eventually, weed that out. So I think it's just really trying to get our head wrapped around the whole body of need in some form of continuity with public agent.
Okay. Thanks, Ethan. And as I mentioned just a few minutes ago about, looking at these priority areas and trying to bring in some experts to talk to us about each of the categories, you'll see that I've taken the liberty of asking Southern Adirondack Child Care Network representative to speak to us today about childcare needs as one of the main I see issues that we're having, or problems related to COVID, but really before COVID even, about our workforce support. And my thought for another immediate expert to come in would be perhaps Rob York to talk to us about mental health services. And you'll see that one is listed under assist vulnerable populations. That item B1 that talks about community services board. That was my thought as far as a future speaker, but if anybody else has a burning desire for some topic that you want to address sooner rather than later, please feel free to speak up. Yes,
Didn't we talk about having Dee come in to talk about the senior meals?
we did talk about that last time, and I think that we hopefully can get an update from Ryan maybe today. That's a good point. Doug, I saw you had your hand up a second ago.
Yeah, the highlighted ones in the red were ones that we discussed in a little more depth. Am I correct on that last meeting?
At the last meeting, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Those
I
are
mean,
the ones, yeah, Doug, that we
We
added.
haven't committed to them. We're just.
No.
Yeah.
No, it was sort of just saying, here's what we're thinking
Mhm.
might be a good ballpark number to throw in there to keep an eye on.
I will say
Yes.
that F4 here, just while we're on this one, on page 5, that was gonna be $1 million, actually.
All right, all right.
They, a little, yeah, a little different. That's the, Housing Accelerator Fund is a general term for, I think, what the first public speaker alluded to. Yeah, and then it's like, hey, we're doing a housing needs assessment for the county soon. That RFP is gonna go out before too long. Like, once we get the recommendations from that plan, it'd be nice to have funding sort of ready to go for the recommendations that were based on the data analysis, and other research.
Are you saying, which one did you say? F4 or 5? F4?
4.
Okay.
F4, there is no F5.
Because we did say $1 million, we're just saying, okay, throwing that out there, $1 million for housing. And then there was a request that came in for the accelerator fund for $1 million.
Yeah, well, I think this gentleman just came in with about 5.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But
Okay,
it's the same sentiment, it's just a matter of how much.
yeah, okay. Yes, Rachel.
Thanks, Chairwoman. Just a point of clarification from our last meeting. I thought that we had decided to set aside $1 million in local business and separately from that, the not-for-profit support. I thought we made that a separate category.
Let's see, hold on.
Am I just looking? in
Which
the wrong
number are
place?
you looking at?
G.
G1 there? I thought we said, yeah,
G1.
Yeah, look at E2 on page 4.
Mhm. But still, I think,
Yeah, I think
I'm
it's a
sorry, ma'am.
category is a little different there, yeah.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I think last meeting we had talked about putting, I think we asked for what would be a good number to ballpark.
I said, I have $1 million written down for
Right.
local grant business
Right.
assistance.
So I just don't see that discussion.
I don't remember what we put down for specifically not-for-profit businesses.
We really didn't, not in the not-for-profit side. There's already $1 million in there for the workforce development, economic development. I think you and I had a discussion on the phone that they kind of intertwined. And then there was another 600,000 that was added to that at the last meeting under E2. Sounds like a game of Battleship or something. But anyway.
You're sunk.
Yeah.
Something.
So, but yeah, this, as I said, this is a work in progress here, process. Certainly, whoever wants to send me notes on it, we'll try to incorporate all those.
Okay. Let's definitely bump up E2 to $1 million, because I have that from my notes as last time too.
Okay.
E2 business assistance. 2
Yeah.
million. Yep. Okay. And I had that down too. So
All right.
that's
So
Okay.
I missed that one then.
That's all right. Rachel, on the not-for-profit too, some of them, although not all, will be, I think, included in the Community Services Board. Rob had provided Wayne a list that he shared with me of maybe 9 or 10 different not-for-profits that already get money funding through the Community Services Board, but I'm sure that there are other not-for-profits out there who don't fall into that bucket.
Well, I think, if I may, these categories can be adjusted depending upon what we get for requests. So I think when you look at the request for the not-for-profit side, there's 5 million in requests. Now, are all of those fundable?
Where do you have those written down under B, like B5 through 12? Well, I see Open Door, United Way.
Oh, you're over on that side. Okay.
I don't know, where are
I
you
think he was
saying?
on G.
G, which is the not-for-profit.
Oh, yeah, right. Yes.
If you were to remove G11 from the total, it becomes a manageable total. So, those are
Well, leave
those
it
are
in there.
discussions.
We'll leave it in there for now. Yeah.
Yes. yeah.
Okay. All right.
So, can we chat about some procedural things first?
Is that going to be discussed under item 2? Sorry, 3?
3, yes.
Yeah. If
Uh,
everyone's ready to turn to that, we can.
Yeah.
Agenda item 3. Which I think leads to the procedural items. Wait, one thing before we go on that, Ryan, do you have any update for us from D as to the committee's discussion last time about?
I do. I thought I missed a question when I was over talking to Supervisor Merlino. And did I also miss a question as to when we could talk about any additional ideas?
No, we
I
didn't
thought I
get to
have
that
heard
yet.
that.
We didn't
Okay.
get to that yet.
Right.
Just touch base on the other thing. Then we'll talk about the second when we talk about
Okay.
procedure going forward.
Yes, I did get some details. Now, the D had sketched out some potential costs. The question was, what if we utilized ARPA funding to fill in the gaps where we haven't been able to find volunteers for Meals on Wheels, so that we could get back to 5 days per week hot meal delivery. And if you look at where the current gaps are, we have 12 routes in Warren County and 1 in Hamilton. Another piece to this puzzle is Hamilton County, because we were a dual county agency, so we would have to figure out where they would fit into this as well. So if you were to say, so each route takes between an hour and an hour and a half to do. So if we were going to pay a per route fee, which would probably be administratively the most expedient way to do it, let's say use $15 for the hour routes and 1.5 times that for the hour-and-a-half routes. Those costs would be anywhere between $47,000 and $70,000 for the Warren County routes. That's annualized. And for the Hamilton County route, anywhere between $3,900 and $5,900. That's the low end estimates that all the routes are 1 hour. The high end estimates that they're all an hour and a half. So that would be the range for where the current deficiencies are. The issue would be, can we sustain a volunteer model for the rest of it, or does going into a paid model naturally mean we're going to transition into a paid model? Now, we looked at that too. For both counties, there's 32 routes in all. 6 of them are in Hamilton. So take an estimate, 32 routes times 5 days a week times 52 weeks, it's 8,320 routes. So the all-in cost is going to be between $125,000 and $179,000 for both counties. If you separate out Hamilton County, the Hamilton County portion of that would be $23,400 to $35,000. So that's what you'd be looking at if we were to transition fully, which I think over time you would expect to be what we would do as volunteers cycle out of the program. Those would be the way our meal program works. We maximize our grants, our federal and our state grants. So any additional costs that we have, the counties would have to be prepared to pick those up once the ARPA funds run out.
Doug?
Thanks, Madam Chairwoman. So Ryan, couple of things. Would Washington County, Hamilton County, since 6 routes out of the total of 32 are Hamilton County, would we expect them to pay part also or no?
Yeah, that's the way the program works. We take, if you look at the Office for the Aging in our budget, it's Warren County and Hamilton County.
Right.
And anything that is a service to Hamilton County is billed out to Hamilton County.
Okay, so the total all-in cost you had was 125 to 180. If we paid all volunteers, we get 5 days a week, hot food to all our seniors in Warren County and Hamilton County. And of that, Hamilton County would be billed out.
Yeah, call it 25,000 to
Yeah.
35,000.
Okay,
Do we
So-
pay mileage?
that was gonna be my next question. Thank you.
That
good.
that doesn't include mileage.
Okay, I think that would have to be, well, I'd like to get us, if they could just work up some numbers on the cost of mileage using the
Sure.
current government per mileage cost.
Sure.
I mean, because that could be significant.
Sure, you bet.
Mileage, and what about food? The food itself?
The food itself will already have,
We have it?
Yeah.
Okay,
You know, we,
it's already covered. in
because
there.
we're cooking it in the various meal sites.
right,
Oh, that's right. And
we-
we're providing them 2 days at a time anyway.
Right.
Okay,
3 days now, yeah.
okay. I mean, I understand what you're saying about it eventually having to go to the 5 days paid. I like to think optimistically that for a little while, at least, we'll have volunteers who will continue doing their routes, at least locally, like ones that don't take them so far out into the far reaches of our counties.
We've re-upped again. Don's put a lot of work into the publicity to get more volunteers, and we've re-upped that effort. We have had some individuals call in and say they're interested,
Oh, good.
but there's a process that they need to, there's a follow-up that needs to happen between OFA and those individuals, and we're just waiting on them to submit more information.
Just a second, Doug. Did you have any questions? Oh, Doug?
Thank you. We can, okay. If we go to a paid delivery system, for those individuals who want to volunteer, because a lot of people do it because they want to feel good about themselves and obviously helping seniors.
Mhm.
Okay. So I think there's always going to be a certain percentage of people who are going to volunteer because they want to volunteer. They're not in it for the money. They don't even want to be reimbursed. So if we go to paid delivery people to fill in the gaps and so forth, we still legally can allow volunteers to do their thing.
Sure.
I mean, there's no regulation that says we can't have a hybrid, we can have a hybrid.
I wouldn't, without having vetted it, I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think so.
Okay, all right, good.
So is the committee interested in seeing some actual numbers on paper, get back to us about filling in the gaps, at least for the immediate future? And go forward with that? Yeah, Dennis?
This is a high priority for me. I think we really need to get this jump started. These numbers you're throwing out here are a year?
Yeah, annualized. And it's under the assumption that you pay $15 for a 1-hour route.
Right. So how many years are we looking at? Or aren't we?
It would be speculative because it depends on if you implement this, how many of our volunteer force do we lose and how does that change over time? My mom, for example, is a volunteer down in Saratoga County, and when she retires, she would keep volunteering. But when she retires, the question is, can you backfill it with a volunteer, or does that new person get paid?
Okay. I think we should move it up and act on it. I don't know why we'd wait.
Go ahead.
Ryan, is there a way to do an estimate on the mileage? Do you have any idea how many miles each of those routes are? And
No, that's the problem, Ray, is there's, if you do 8,320 routes, I don't know. I would need to get more data on the average route length.
so we're looking at, what is it now, like 58 cents a mile?
Right.
Federal rate, I think.
Right.
Mike and then Doug?
Madam Chair, thank you. The question for Ryan, is that the national trend that volunteers for these types of programs are declining and people are going towards a paid program?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you whether they're going towards a paid program, but what I can tell you is that we're not the only county in the state that's having this experience. I'm mostly plugged in due to my mom to Saratoga. They're having a lot of trouble as well with, the workforce required to do this.
If I might follow up, is
Yeah.
that still a side effect of COVID? You know?
In our experience, our volunteer force did decline during COVID. There was Matilda's law, which wasn't really a law, but it recommended that folks over a certain age refrain from personal interactions. So we did lose a lot of people due to that.
Thank you.
Doug, sorry, I forgot about you. for a second.
So just recapping the numbers, worst case scenario. If we went to an all paid force, it would be approximately to the Warren County, 100 to 155K, with the other approximately 25K coming from Hamilton County. So, and that's if we went 100% paid force. That's per year. That's without the mileage. To me, that's a very, and that's if we're all 100%. I don't believe we'll even be, and I'm basing that on the amount of people that I hear just enjoy doing it and want to do it. But I'd be shocked if we even got to 50% paid volunteers, but that's okay. So in other words, that 100,000 to 155,000 is obviously super, super, super conservative on the high side. It's going to be much lower, much lower. So I moved Chairman Dickinson. This should be on the fast track. We've been trying to figure out how we can fund and help out to get the 5 hot meals a week for our seniors. This should be on the fast track, and the cost.
Uh-oh, my phone's on fast track.
Okay, you got your phone on fast track, Dennis. The cost, in my impression, is minimal for what we're getting in return. So again, 100, even if it's 100,000, that's if every single person's paid, which is not going to happen.
Wayne, do you have a recommendation?
Well, this, actually, no, but this is a segue into what I wanted to talk about, which I think is a precursor to all this, is Ethan got secured the applications that are used by Ulster County and Saratoga County. I did send an email to Larry a week and a half or so ago. We had a discussion about the agreements that would be necessary to disperse these funds. Those are both very critical because the application gives us the work program that's going to be Exhibit A or Attachment A to an agreement that we need to have the information in order to report to the U.S. Treasury of how these funds are expended. So it's all well and good, to sit here and say, yeah, we're going to go do this, but we need the program broken down by D and an full application process that gives us the measurables and the metrics of how we're going to determine that we have met the ARPA requirements and that we have something that says, 600 meals were delivered, or whatever the number is, that we have some metrics that we can report on as to how these funds were used. So in some respects, I think we're getting a little bit cart before the horse until, the county attorney can say, yes, we have a draft, an agreement process that we can use to make this go forward. And I just threw you under the bus.
It's okay, because I saw the bus coming.
Right. I mean, we had a discussion about it.
Yeah, absolutely, we did. And it's the cart and the horse. So it's the application process as well, and what the
Yeah.
factors are that ARPA require, or the federal government requires reported back, which I would need to kind of flesh out the terms of a contract. So it's a little cyclical. I have not reached out to other counties yet, but I will do that in the upcoming weeks. I think my only call for caution on the current discussion regarding Meals for Wheels, which is a wonderful program, is what are the additional costs? How is this going to be structured? Are they employees? If they're not if they are employees, what's the hours cap that's going to be on them? What are the other incidental benefits, workers' comp expenses, liability insurance? And then if they're not, can they be 1099 per diem employees, given that to what degree are you directing their work? There's multiple factors, and I'm not an expert in that analysis, but I know it's not necessarily favorable to 1099 status. And I would really defer to the treasurer more on that piece moving forward as far as the classification, but all of those issues would need to be addressed before something were to actually be put in place as far as a paid, creating a new paid workforce, unless the concept is to go through an agency.
There you go.
I hear what both of you are saying. I will note, and I think it's important that we talk about the process and we go forward and we have outside entities make sure they're submitting applications and we understand what the back end agreements are going to look like and they're reporting back to us. On the other hand, we just gave out a ton of money to our own county functions. This is a county function, and I'm sure that we can figure that out. I think we're probably not ready today, given some of the questions that are arising about, are they going to be employees versus contractors? Do we pay mileage? How much is that? What exactly does the program look like to fill the remaining days? We're just talking about that for right now. Make sure we get those questions answered. And another one that I'd like, which is a bigger policy question, is $15 an hour is going to probably be more than some of our food workers are making, which is to me a problem. In any event, I'd like to move on and make sure that this is at the top of our priority list for those of us who are kind of working hard on the backside to get these moving forward. We'll bring it to the next meeting.
We'll do
But
some,
before we close this discussion, I want to make sure I get back to Mike.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. And I believe that you might have had a conversation with Major Lloyd at the Salvation Army recently. I had the good fortune of meeting him yesterday with Liza. He's pretty creative about looking into alternative ways to fund the total meal program. So I think as we go forward, I'd like us to kind of think about the big picture instead of just the delivery drivers, and see what we can do about maybe restructuring, and maybe through some restructuring, we might be able to save some money in the process. So just a thought, but thank you for that.
Bigger picture.
Moment.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Ethan for this next agenda item to talk to us about other programs and what we could be thinking about doing here.
Okay, yeah, real quick, number 3, it's, 2/3 of the way through the packet here. Basically what we wanted to do was evaluate how some other municipalities went about allocating grants to different not-for-profits and, community organizations and businesses that didn't necessarily get money through paycheck protection program. Maybe they might not have access to all this other state funding that municipal governments get. And we wanted to sort of avoid doing a sort of ad hoc approach to funding small organizations on a meeting by meeting basis. When we first started soliciting project ideas, this group said, hey, let's put out this online forum. We're going to try to understand the impacts of the pandemic. People may or may not submit, the budget or the project partners on this one. We really just want to generate some ideas. To Wayne's point about wanting to understand the nuts and bolts out of how some of these programs work, now that we have a firmer understanding of what the priority areas of focus are that we reached with those 7 items, it might make sense for some aspects of the funding that we allocate through this sort of competitive process, go through a more defined grant process. I reached out to Saratoga County. I reached out to Ulster County. So if you look in the packet, the first one, Saratoga County Nonprofit COVID Relief Grant Fund Overview and Application. Spoke to Jason Kemper, who is he was the deputy county administrator for a little bit and also the head of the planning department. And he said, hey, really quickly we realized that we got flooded with a lot of different requests, a lot of very good, legitimate requests, but we wanted to sort of understand how we could manage that. So what they did was they set a project maximum award amount. So I think theirs was about $50,000. And then they had a slightly more detailed program criteria. They widely solicited the application to as many people as they could get. And they set a clear closing date for the application process. So this is going to allow a wider range of people that maybe didn't just look at the project solicitation form. And we were very clear about this as a group that, this was not the final stop for asking for funding. That was all over the narrative in the front end of that. The Saratoga County, you'll see there, it's a very straightforward approach. There's a program overview and there's application instructions. They allocated a certain amount of money to this program as well. So I think in Saratoga County, it was $2 million. They received more funding than we did. And as it was explained to me, this is a good opportunity to reach out to all sorts of different community groups. Let's say a T-ball team didn't get to do fundraising because they couldn't go door to door selling chocolate bars. So they could do, a couple grand for money for that. Some of these groups that don't normally get engagement from the county. So I thought that was clever. It's like, hey, we set a limit of the project amount. Obviously some of the requests that we've already received are well above $50,000 and these projects have merit. And this is not going to stop us from funding those full amounts. It's just, hey, for some of these other projects, maybe we set a cap so that the applicant has a clear understanding of what they can ask for and design a program to that. And I think as you look through the project solicitations that we've got, the feedback, some of it was really concrete and other was a little bit less clear. So this might provide more structure for applicants. So take a look at that. The second thing in there is Ulster County nonprofit recovery application. And I thought this was a good example of a pretty well-defined application. This has far more information than we had asked for. It's not overwhelming in our first project solicitation form. This will let us sort of hone in and compare how these different projects are addressing our impact areas. So take a look at that. This will, I'm trying to think what number we can look at here. Like questions 20, 22, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26 and 27. These are all, I think, really useful questions that an applicant should be able to answer if they are going to be funded. And this is particularly for, groups that aren't within county government already. I would take a look at these if you could. I know these got sent out earlier today, but the basic idea that I'm trying to introduce to this committee is for some of these block allocations of money that we want to do, business relief funds or not-for-profit. We've heard from groups like Park Theater or, Adirondack Theater Festival. Like, we set a limit on it and have a certain chunk, whether it's 1 million or 2 million or whatever that might be, we decide as a group. And then from there, clear application, and then open, the windows open to a certain point, and then we evaluate all the applications at once. And really what I'm trying to do is avoid just saying, all right, here's one project idea, let's look at that. Oh, there's another project idea, let's look at that. Let's give everyone a fair shake at, submitting the good ideas, doing a clear description, so we all have the same information about the projects. And then once we have the entire body of projects, we evaluate those. It's not necessarily going to sideline the other work that the group is doing on some of the larger projects, but it's just one way to give some sort of semblance of organization and equity in some of these other community groups. So
Okay,
take a look.
no, I think this is good. So it's, you're primarily thinking of not-for-profit groups or,
Yeah, there could be not-for-profit, there could be business groups too. I know, in here we had a line item, Supervisor Sieber mentioned on the draft spending plan, workforce support and business assistance, we set up to $1 million. So it's like, hey, that's the pot of money. We can set the maximum grant amount to a certain level. Like in Saratoga County, it was like, hey, you guys purchased, PPE, you did air handling equipment, all this other stuff. Document these costs, let's see the invoices, and then after that, say, okay, we can start considering that.
okay. I mean, we do have the line item for E2 at $1 million for business assistance. What do people think about making G1 $1 million there for not-for-profit assistance? And then going through this process, like we're talking, that Ethan is recommending that we set up an application, a formal time frame. Because I am hearing people are, just still submitting ideas through the portal, but setting a clear time frame that says you've got to get your actual submission in by X deadline, and then we will go through and look at all of them fairly and do what we have to do.
Yeah.
Like
and-
if Biddle were here, he'd say, give it the thumbs up or the down.
Right, and I think one thing we should understand with this, this is not intended to like stymie the flow of money to organizations that need it for, critical operating expenses. I think we should stay open to all of that. Hey, there's a group that is clearly, displaying need and they have to get that money. It's like, let's not necessarily close out the idea of fronting the money and work on reporting after that, because like we're still in the midst of the pandemic. We know a lot of organizations have been drastically impacted.
Thoughts? Committee? How about my suggestion of bump up G1 to $1 million?
I'm for that.
Okay, okay. Yes, Mike,
Are we going to assign a maximum per application?
that's a great question.
Because I think that really needs to be done.
Yeah.
That works better, because to me, somebody applies and they know that they're only going to get, that the maximum they can get is X number of dollars. We're going to get a clearer picture of where the money's going to go.
Yeah, if you look there at G, we've got everything from $0 requested up through $4.7 million. North Creek,
Yeah, and these guys were doing $50,000.
the ski museum, the ski museum.
Um,
Isn't that in North Creek? No.
No, in the narrative, it says
4.7
300,000. If you read the narrative, it just says they only want 300.
I'm sorry. Let me reel it back in. Mike,
Yeah, sure.
Can I,
this one, sorry, let me let Mike Swan finish.
the only other thing is that I would strongly recommend an application deadline date too,
Yep, yeah, that's all.
because otherwise we're never going to get done.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would have to be clearly publicized.
Mike Wild and then Rachel.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I agree with setting limits, but there might be projects that come across our table that are much longer term impact. I get it. $2,000 to a Little League club because they couldn't do, their fundraising. I understand those needs, but there may be some significant moves that we could make that are strategic, that are longer lasting, that I hope we can put maybe a different category that has some money in it that goes above and beyond that $50,000 limit, that it's a G or an H or an I, whatever it is, for strategic kind of moves.
Well, I think as that comes in, we could always say, all right, we're going to take this out of the bucket of category G
Right.
and move it to
Yeah.
somewhere else where it really is having an impact, let's say for assisting vulnerable populations.
Right, or
Is that-
you set the limits on the program. So whether it's, $1 million or not for each of these recovery grant programs, we still have unallocated money in which we can talk about some of these bigger projects, right? So let's just say at the end of the day, we hypothetically decide on $2 million or $3 million for these two different programs, the business support, not-for-profit support. We're still going to have that remaining unallocated balance in which we can evaluate project ideas. So it's certainly not taking out some of the bigger projects from the mix. It's just for some of the people that I think we'll find there's a number of groups that will take advantage of this, but we'll see.
It just gets them to sharpen their pencil when they're requesting. That's all.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, anyone that's written a grant knows it's like, a lot of especially the community service organizations, like, yeah, could we use $1 million? Like, yeah, we could certainly find a way to use $1 million if it's addressing homelessness or substance abuse or anything like that. It's like, so yeah, having a clearly defined limit, you design your program to that.
Just 1 second. Do you guys have a time limitation, Lynn? Okay. Go ahead, Rachel.
I definitely think this is an idea that I can get behind and support. My only caution here would be that I've heard from other businesses and communities that one of the frustrations is not knowing how they'll be evaluated, where the emphasis will be in particular areas. And I think it would only be fair to have I don't want to say a scoring sheet because I don't think that's the right term, but more of a evaluation document that's consistent. So recognizing the application for not-for-profits would certainly be different than an application for businesses, and the scoring rubrics would be respectfully different as well. So, I'm just hopeful that as we continue to create, and maybe our next meeting, we could look at draft applications and talk a little bit about the rubric that would go with it to score them or to evaluate them, so that we could do that, on a consistent and fair basis.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that's why we have the 7, the priority areas, the impact areas. I think if we can use that as the background document by which we establish some of this criteria, because, that was generated from the public survey, conversation with stakeholders, this group's discussions. I think we have some degree of consensus on that. Maybe we can use that as the basis of that criteria. So it's like, hey, we've identified these areas. And then in this application, we can ask, how do you address these areas?
To your earlier point though, about the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or whatever, or Little League Club, I mean, if they need $5,000 to continue their efforts, and that doesn't really, that's not going to help assist vulnerable populations, are we saying we wouldn't give them money? I don't think we are. So maybe it doesn't,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying about the
Well, I think
focusing it on the priority areas, but maybe we can just say, all right, if you submit this application, you fill out, this one from Ulster County seems really detailed to me. Maybe we could have something a little
Yeah, I
slimmer.
mean, I think, for something, let's just say, to use the example of a Little League team, I think one of the things we did here, and it might be in assisting vulnerable populations or in the immediate response needs, I think we heard a lot about, hey, what happened to the kids during the pandemic? The mental health the community needs. It was like, there's that huge impact. So if we're supporting community groups like that, I think we all heard from the public that that was a pretty important thing to at least address if we can.
Okay,
And the
Okay,
flip
fair.
side of
Yeah.
the small project amounts too is, Ulster County, they set a $5,000 minimum on this one. And this is something that we're gonna have to figure out administratively. When it comes to the reporting requirements for these grants, it's like, are we gonna spend 40 hours of staff time to administer a $500 program? So we just have to be conscious of that as we get into it. And I think we'll learn more as we dig into, the idea behind the Meals on Wheels, or Liza's project that we talked about. We agreed on funding for the laptops. I think those will be some of the guinea pig programs that we have to work out the nuts and bolts of, and we'll have a better idea of what the administration looks like.
Larry.
Supervisor Sieber mostly addressed the point I wanted to raise, because I'm thinking of that end product contract. So to the degree we don't focus on one application, but maybe tailor applications to whatever the reporting requirements might be for each of these areas. It's certainly, one, I think it's going to give you a better response from the community, but two, it'll make the contracting process administratively easier. And then second, to the degree that it wouldn't require 40 hours of administrative time, I would encourage the committee to consider micro grants so that smaller organizations can do a much simpler form potentially for a much smaller amount. So you're not necessarily just dealing with the larger not-for-profits in Warren County. But that may not be feasible given reporting requirements.
And we'll play it by ear, but I do think,
No, I
I think
think-
there's an appetite for the small group.
Yeah, we can make that happen. Okay, before we go to our next agenda item, which is our presentation, I just want to open it up to anybody else who wants to speak freely. Go ahead,
Thank you.
Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you. It's relevant, I promise.
Good, I'm sure it is.
I have a question and I have a comment. The question is to the micro grants, is there some administrative way to place them under one heading so you're reporting only on?
The
That-
fund. That's a
Yeah.
good idea. That would be ideal, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So there might be some way to do that. But to the point that was being made before that, I would just ask the committee, if you're putting a cap on awards, to consider the value of collaboration. And I think this is a good segue to the presentation we're about to hear. When organizations come together, we're all stronger. And when they're looking at the bigger picture, we're all stronger. So I would just ask you, if you're going to put a cap, maybe also recognize that collaboration and collaborative efforts should maybe be funded a little bit higher. Thanks.
Yes, right.
I wanted to float an idea that I've had and see what the committee thinks. From the perspective of tourism, the tourism has been an industry that's been singled out in ARPA as an impacted industry. If you remember, a year or two ago, the county did a very open-ended RFP related to the county fairgrounds, where we said, if you have an idea for the county fairgrounds, come one, come all, make a proposal and we'll evaluate the proposals and decide what we do with the fairgrounds. I wonder if there would be any interest in applying the same idea to tourism recovery and rejuvenation, where we put out a general RFP request to anybody out there, whether it be local businesses, other organizations that are active in the tourism community, to see if anybody has any out of the box ideas. Have them submit an RFP. We could consider them here. We could consider them at the OCTAX committee. We've been doing very, very well in OCTAX revenue. Again, no guarantee of funding, but just to beat the bushes and see if the community has ideas. And I'm wondering, it would be easy enough for us to do, to get something like that turned out of the purchasing department. And I'm just wondering whether anybody has strong reactions to that one way or another.
Supervisor Dickinson,
You want me to react?
co-chair. Yeah, I do.
I have two general comment. I don't mind picking up these little things, but I think we need to concentrate on these bigger ones and get moving on them. Every time we have this meeting, we seem to get bogged down in the minutia. And I think we should skim the surface of the ones we're really concerned about, the big dollar ones, and get them moving. I don't mind collecting this data. If at some point in time we get near the end, we have monies left over. It's certainly something that I would like to consider. But I think we need to concentrate a little on getting some of these other projects moving.
Yeah, just to
The tourism, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that, and that would be the purpose of having a set application deadline. So instead of
Right.
trying to do it on like an ad hoc basis every meeting, it's like, hey, here's a deadline, look at the body of them, and then do it. So that way we can focus on the important stuff. So that's a sort of the strategy behind it.
Good. As far as the tourism goes, I have mixed emotions. The businesses were seriously hampered by the lack of help. Some of the restaurants were down to 5 days a week. So the help they had would get a couple of days off to recoup. I'm not sure how significantly financially hurt they were by that. It was certainly a stress on a lot of them. A lot of the motel owners became very good at housekeeping. They do what they have to do. And then we had, as is shown by the occupancy tax, a tremendous season during COVID. So I'm a little concerned about where the need would be there, Ryan.
Thought I saw another hand. Somebody, did you, Mike? Go ahead.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
Sorry, Madam
Yeah, it
Chair.
is.
Thank you. I agree. I think we need to look at different opportunities. Tourism is a big part of our general economy. And I think that not only for tourism, but every piece of the puzzle that we're looking to accomplish here, I'd love to be able to see and request ideas on, again, I'm going to go back to my talk about strategic. Do you have an idea that's going to help workforce? Do you have an idea that's going to help workforce and housing? They all help our local economy. And I know I've said it before, this is a once in a generation type infusion of money. We need to take a segment of it and make some bigger plays. That might include some risk. But I agree with Supervisor Dickinson in our co-chair that it's important for us to move on some of the bigger things. It just, I don't see us really thinking about those bigger things so much right now, other than the meal program we talked about.
Ryan, I guess when you said about Julie and the example of the fairgrounds, have you talked to her about putting out such a thing to get
have,
some
yeah.
creative, like big, be great if someone came up with some wonderful, huge idea to help with the marketing of the tourism industry or something of that nature is what I'm thinking.
And I'm not, I think that it's wise to do that, but I think it's
And let
wise
that
to
run
look
in the
at it.
background, maybe, of our process.
Exactly. And it might be something that we seriously want to consider.
Go ahead. Yep.
I did. I asked her, I told her that I was thinking about broaching this idea in this forum and asked her what her thoughts were as to, how it would be to get it out and whether it'd be worthwhile. And she didn't have any objections to it.
Do we need to pass a resolution today to say, Julie, go ahead and try it and see what we get?
No.
And this is, in my mind, this is also something that is OCTAC's discussion.
Yes.
We can't have this alone. Yeah. Or tourism, whichever committee over there who's not paying attention right this minute. Go ahead, Wayne.
G6 talks about that. They didn't put a dollar amount to it, but they talked about something very similar to what Ryan was just saying. So
Okay. Okay.
just food for thought.
Rachel?
I just think, again, this is something that the majority of the community could get behind if it was something that maybe fell more under economic development and not just tourism, or as a whole to the county board, and looking at proposals on how they can help the entire county recover and respond and build up that resiliency. I mean, maybe that's not a specific application, but rather we put a request out to, we're certainly smarter when we're out there talking to experts and collaborating, as Supervisor Hogan indicated to. So maybe putting an ask out there, we might have some really incredible ideas come back that can help. Maybe it isn't just tourism, but it becomes businesses and not-for-profits and individuals in ways that, could support our entire county, and not a specific application.
In a collaborative way,
Right.
that'd be awesome.
Maybe that'd be one of the requirements, that it be a collaborative effort.
Okay, I don't want to bog down our discussion, but I don't want to cut us off early either. If anyone has any more, Beth.
I just want to change gears for a sec. I wanted to comment on the collaboration. If you look at some of these projects, they're very similar from different entities. So where in the process are we going to say, hey, how about you talk to you, one of you is the lead, and then come into us? So I just wanted to make that statement that instead of getting 3 of the same proposals from 3 different places, maybe we should think ahead a little bit and try to hook those people up before a proposal for, a project application comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe let them know it's like, hey,
Right.
$50,000 maximum, work together on this, or even beyond the scope of the application. Yeah.
Yeah, and even looking at a couple of these, I mean, there's entities that we could hook up together right now to talk about making one program for a specific kind of thing.
Need. Yeah. Yeah.
So I just want to throw that out there.
Okay. That's a good point. Okay, Liza, will you introduce our speaker for us today for our presentation? That would be awesome. I'm putting you on the spot.
My pleasure. Thank you. So we have Lynn Sickles, the Executive Director of Southern Adirondack Child Care Network, here today to share with you what her proposal is and request for ARPA funding. I am here for moral support, but offer also to answer any questions, since Lynn and I are also working on other child care projects together. So without further ado, Lynn, welcome.
Yeah, come on up to the podium. Thanks, Lynn. So in the spirit of collaboration, there are some other proposals about childcare, but Lynn is an expert in this area. So one of the things I asked her to do was to discuss the need in general, and lo and behold, they have a needs analysis already done, which is in your packet if you want to review that. I think it's before the application materials. Yeah, it's greenish. But if you want to refer to that at all while she's speaking. Go ahead, Lynn. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me today and giving me an opportunity to talk about childcare, which is a passion of mine. I've been in this position for 30 years. The Child Care Network is 30 years old in 2022. So it's a big year for us, and it's an exciting time. But the childcare situation is vast, and it's very, very complex. So in the essence of time, I'll try to be a little bit succinct today, because I could go on about childcare for hours, but I won't. So you have the community needs assessment in front of you, but the thing that I really wanted to just point out that I think stands out the most to me on it is that since 2019, roughly when the pandemic began, 693 slots were lost in childcare due to program closures. And that's a 40% reduction in the supply of childcare. And I don't think I need to go into the details about how that might or how it does impact the businesses and the economic development of the area. Plus, we need to remember that program closures, we're losing businesses in this community. Childcare, they're businesses, they're taxpayers, they're paying into the system. So that's another whole piece of it. But I will tell you also that most of the childcare in this area is in-home regulated childcare called family childcare. You see the centers, their signs are big, but most of the childcare is of a much smaller nature. And that works really well in so many of our rural communities. A center is very hard to sustain in all of those areas. So family childcare is just a huge boon in small communities, although right now we don't have any in a number of our small communities. And we've been working with the supervisors and the school superintendents in some of our northern communities to try and build that supply there. That's not to say that here in the middle of town, we don't need it too. We do. We need it everywhere. And we need it especially for infants and school age. But the numbers don't paint the whole picture. Some programs that have remained open, especially in childcare centers and school age programs, they have a staffing shortage. So they have space, but their classrooms are closed because they don't have enough staff. That's a huge issue that is hopefully being addressed on the state level in terms of trying to assist in raising wages for the people who work in childcare. And at this point, they are at the bottom 2% of professionals. So they don't earn a lot of money. And many of the family childcare programs during the pandemic opted to not take additional families because families were coming into their home. They wanted to just stick with the families that they currently had. So again, there may be some openings in places, but they either can't fill them because there's no staff or they can't, they don't want to bring them in. And hopefully as the pandemic maybe will continue to go away, more slots will open in that way. But parents call us looking for childcare. That's one of the huge pieces we do, in addition to trying to build the supply and provide professional development to childcare providers. But we follow up on all calls when someone calls us looking for care. And the biggest barrier they're saying is there are no openings. We don't know what to do. I might have to quit my job. I can't find childcare. So that's really hard to hear. And the impact that that's having. All of the current programs, based on what availability they have, they often have long waiting lists. So if you're looking for childcare in the next 2 weeks, you're probably not going to find it. You might not find it at all in this area right now. And this is not just Warren County. This is around the state, around the country. There's lots of information out there about all of this. But so it's a top priority of ours at the Child Care Network to build supply. We can't serve the parent population if we don't have the supply. There's nothing more frustrating for us than to tell a parent, I'm sorry, there's no childcare in that community where you're looking, or there's no infant openings. That's not what we're in the business to do. So it's just, it's important for us, but it's important for the working parents. So, and it's a broken system right now that was in decline before the pandemic. The pandemic just exasperated it, as it did so many other things. And it's not going to be rebuilt in a short period of time. That's the thing I think we all need to remember, that it isn't a quick fix, but we have to start somewhere, which is part of what my proposal to you is about. And I'm requesting that the funds be used to recruit and provide startup funding to 15 new family-based childcare programs throughout the county. That results in roughly 120 to 240 slots of high quality family childcare. And the difference in the number, the 120 to 240, is the size of the program. There is something called family childcare. There's something called group family childcare. That's just double the numbers, and they have an assistant. So the lack of funds is that someone has may be a real barrier to opening a program, because they need to pay for, required pre-training, which we do. There may be possible inspections that they need, minor renovations, and the purchase of equipment and supplies. I'm working with a provider right now in Washington County who wants to open, but she needs to add a small deck and stairs to make her home compliant to meet the childcare regulations. If we can't help her, and I fortunately have a small pot of money, donated money that I'm able to use, she'll be able to open in a community where there is no childcare. So this is something that's so important to us that we're able to do that. And so opening a family childcare is far less expensive than opening a center. I know people might be thinking huge dollars, but we're talking $1,500 to $2,000 is probably enough to be able to open most programs and be able to get them off to a really good start. So in terms of the funds that I requested, approximately 30,000 would be used towards helping providers open. We have the experience of providing startup funds to programs, which from years ago. So we already have a startup application in place, and we have vendors in place who we are already working with. We don't just give them the money. That's a piece that we don't do. It's we purchase the supplies, we pay if there's renovations, we're paying the contractor. So the provider isn't actually ever receiving the exact dollars, because that way we control it and we're sure that they use the funds in the way that we're expecting them to. And we have a tracking mechanism for it too. So our goal is not to just open new programs. We want to open quality, high sustainable programs. And in order to do that, we do a lot of hand-holding. That is part of the process that we go through. We'll walk them through the application process, and we try to prevent that stage where they might get frustrated and overwhelmed and decide they're not going to follow through. We're there. We have other funding to do that.
Lynn,
So-
can I interrupt you for a
Yes, you
second?
sure can, absolutely.
Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah, but I was going to let Lynn finish.
Okay. One of the questions I have when you're talking about pre-training inspections, renovations and supplies, that sounds to me as if they all then will be certified by OCFS, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And what about families who are able to qualify for subsidies? I guess if we were to give funding, I would want to make sure that the providers are willing to take the families who will also get the subsidized payments.
Then that becomes a requirement on the grant application that they sign and attest that they are willing to accept families who are on subsidy and will have the care paid for by the county.
Do you think that that's a barrier to incentivizing, which is what we're trying to do? Maybe I shouldn't have asked that question.
No, it's okay.
Never ask a question you don't know the answer to, right?
Right. Well, no, that's okay, because I want to give the best answer that I can to that question. It's hard for me to say because I don't specifically know how providers would feel. What I can say is that the rate that the counties pay for childcare is less than what private pay may be. And the counties pay market rate, but there's lots of legislation out there right now, and we are anxiously awaiting the passage of the state budget, which may correct some of the issues around subsidy. But I wouldn't say I would be opposed to put that in a grant application.
Okay, I know we did talk about this at our National Association or State Association of Counties, that there was something coming up, a bill hopefully would be passed to help correct some of that. But I think you and I also talked that sometimes the subsidies allow the slots to be used for just 1 or 2 days a week, or that's all they get paid for. Even though that then takes away from a family who would otherwise take up the whole week and go to that provider every day of the week or something like that. I'm sorry, Ethan, go ahead.
I just had a question about, generally ballpark figure, what's the the subsidy gap between, publicly supported versus the private, fee. And is that something that we could look at as part of our multi-pronged strategy for childcare? Get
Mhm,
people back
it
to
is.
work. Is that something we could address too through this?
I don't have the figure right off the top of my head, but I can say the gap may run anywhere between $25 and $50 per child per week for a full-time child.
So it's not
But
huge, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's there. It's significant enough that someone might not want to. And there are other reasons other do dollars that a provider might not choose to take subsidy. It may have to do with the way payment is made. That's a big hurdle to tackle, but usually a provider expects a parent to pay for the following week's care on a Friday or first thing on Monday morning. With the county subsidy, they get paid 2 to 3 weeks after the month the care is provided. So they're not getting paid. So that's a big barrier to wanting to take county. And it's something
That's
that,
a real problem.
it is a problem. But I don't
I mean, a
want to
real problem for people. It's a problem. I want to say it impacts people in real ways
It does.
when they don't get paid for 6 weeks. Then.
Right. Or even 4 weeks. I mean, even if the payment's there like that, yes, it does have an impact and it can be a barrier. So there are some barriers to accepting subsidy.
Once they get past that period, though, they're going to be paid on a regular basis. It's the first time that they're not going to get it. Correct?
Yes, they are paid on a regular basis, but they're always being paid in arrears,
Correct.
which is not the case with a private pay. A private pay parent is paying upfront.
Got it.
Rachel?
This is very informative and I appreciate it. I'm wondering if there's a way in context of this discussion to even explain about ARPA dollars. If in this grant, at least there could be a question saying, would you be open to considering subsidies in your daycare if approved? Because I also understand it's the difference between enrollment and attendance, which is an issue. And I'd like to see the ARPA committee, and maybe not today, but the next time we meet, talk about possible resolutions in support of changing the legislation, because the attendance and enrollment, the method of payment, and of course, the disparity in the pay are all things that I think as a county, if we're going to prioritize this, we also need to be prepared to fight for it and advocate for it at a state level. But I do think there's an avenue there with some ARPA dollars to close the gap if they were willing to accept those subsidies.
And I think that would be a great incentive for them to do that.
Great.
And hopefully by the time you meet again, there may be there will be, I think, a resolution from the state, and we'll know what kind of state dollars are being put into subsidy and how that's going to shift the childcare subsidy system. Great, thanks.
Rachel, anything? Follow up?
No, that addresses it. If that piece could just be there, so that they think about it.
I think that's a great idea if we did do that. Mike?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And that was a really good question because it's an important piece of this. If you talk to anyone in the business community, they're going to tell you that workforce is a huge issue. Everybody's looking for work. And I just took a trip down to Florida and back, and I drove. And everywhere there's help wanted signs. Lynn, thank you so much for working with Liza, because I know you guys are working in tandem to address this. I'm in favor of moving this forward to the full board. But what I would like to see in terms of the collaboration is that there are so many businesses that are struggling with their workforce, and this can help alleviate some of this. And there's so many, what are we at, 3% unemployment, Liza, for the county right now? I've said it before, the economists consider that full employment. So how do we get some of this 3% to help join our workforce to alleviate some of the problems we're having? And this is a great way to do it because of the fact that childcare is such an issue. Lynn, in terms of the cost of childcare, I've followed this. Liza's helped me. I've been trying to get my arms around this, and I remember it as a percentage nationally of the $15 an hour wage. and you probably have it, but I'm thinking that there's no incentive to go to work if you have to pay for childcare. Because if you're getting 15 bucks an hour, it's just not worth going to work. But Lynn, maybe you have some statistics and numbers on that?
I don't have statistics and numbers with me today. I'm sorry, but you are 100% correct in what you're saying. And it's a combination. People in the childcare industry are often earning that $15 an hour, and they can't afford the service they're providing. And the parents, other parents who are earning that amount of money certainly can't afford it, but they may indeed be eligible for subsidy. It's those middle income families that are really struggle to pay for childcare. Those at the upper ends are probably doing okay also. They can afford the $200 a week for their full-time infant and the additional $170 that they have to pay for their preschooler. But
So,
yeah.
Thank you, Lynn. And Madam Chair, just two quick more things. We talked about collaboration. Is the private sector supporting some of this with incentives to help make this happen?
We are about to embark on that. I've been working with Liza on this, and we're doing a presentation on Thursday, chamber presentation, and we're on a panel together, and we're going to be talking about how businesses can contribute and hopefully build a sustainability fund that they're going to be able to donate to. So we're pretty excited about this. It's part of the partnership that's ongoing right now with us.
If you can talk about the example that you mentioned to me, I think that's a wonderful idea about the private businesses purchasing a slot.
Okay. I absolutely can. One of the things that it's not happening in this area, but is an option for a business is that, and it can be a win-win, is that a business would purchase slots in a program. And if a parent who works for that business is in the slot, the parent's paying for the childcare. However, if that parent leaves, the business pays the childcare provider until that slot is refilled with someone from that business. So it's a benefit to the business in terms of employees being able to have childcare. It's a benefit to the provider to reserve those slots for the business. So the model exists elsewhere. It does not exist here yet, but we know it exists.
I think it's great because I could see like somebody hiring part-time employees who work 3 days a week. That parent gets the daycare slot for those 3 days, and then the business has somebody that does the other 2 days, and that parent gets those 2 days with the daycare spot. But the provider holds the spot for the whole week for that business's employees. Anyway, sorry, Mike, and then Dennis.
Just one more. Lynn, considering that this is a nationwide problem, are there any novel case studies that have been successful that we could look at that we might be able to employ in our region?
I'm sure there are, and I would be happy to do some research on behalf of the committee to see if there are other things that might be available.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I'm sure Liza and I can come up with some novel ideas just by sitting down over coffee.
I'm sure that will happen. I'll even pay for that cup of coffee.
Wayne, I've got to go to my co-chair Dennis here before I come back to you.
Was that a motion?
Yes,
Mike?
it was.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor regarding the proposal, which is in your packet at page 17 of the 68, for anyone who's following along. In the giant packet of proposals that Wayne has organized, the 68 pages, it's page 17. And with that, Wayne, go ahead.
Well, just a couple things as a follow-up to what Mike was asking before. If you look at $15 an hour, that's roughly $2,500 a month before taxes. If you're paying $1,200 a month for childcare, that's $14,000 a year. There's just nothing left. Why go to work? And I think that's the discussion we've had in the office is like, you need to have affordable childcare.
Yeah, I won't put anyone on the spot who's in this room, but I can speak to myself. I'm so glad that my children are now beyond childcare because it was, very difficult to find the childcare, in the area and have it be affordable for our family.
It costs more than mortgage and escrow combined
There you have it.
for one kid.
Ryan and then Ray.
Yeah, I have a technical question on this, and I think it's a wonderful idea, this proposal. The cost amount at the bottom is 112.5. And there was some reason I had a note in my notes that the ARPA amount was 82.5, and maybe it was based on a previous budget breakdown that's no longer valid. Is the number 112.5 or is it 82.5?
As far as I know, it's 112.5.
12.5, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
There might be some cases where the total project budget was higher, but then the amount being asked from county ARPA funds was less than the total. project. That might be the case with the ski museum too.
That's what I thought it was. I thought there was some other component other than
Yeah.
ARPA that got it up to the 112, but
I
maybe
think
I'm
so.
wrong.
Yeah. I believe so.
I understand this is about family-centered childcare. You mentioned Major Lloyd before. He talked with us last time about the possibility of where he is at the St. Alphonsus School, turning that into a center. And I'm assuming that if we move this forward, it doesn't mean we can't entertain that at a later date, correct?
That's correct. I mean, at some point, we're going to start running out of money, but I do think that that's a whole separate need, is to have the childcare centers. And I know that SUNY Adirondack has put in a very large proposal for a center to be based at the college.
And we are working very closely with Major Lloyd in helping them move forward with their childcare center application. Actually, we're meeting with them on Friday.
Cool. Wayne?
My understanding is this is a one-time expense.
I think Lynn had explained to me that she would try to spread this money out over 2 years.
That would be my anticipation, that because it is a long-term rebuild. The other wonderful news that we just had this morning, we will be partnering with SUNY Adirondack to create a pipeline career track with them for childcare startup. So this money would partner and piggyback. So not only would they have the career pipeline, but there would also be additional dollars here to help them get started. And of course, yeah, we're not overlooking the dollars that Liza has at Warren County Employment and Training. So yeah, if all programs are successful, and then, we're going to bring the childcare slots and the situation back to where it was pre-pandemic, which would be really exciting.
So I feel obligated to make the comment that we did talk about how we were going to have a process for collecting applications. We also said we wouldn't get bogged down with stopping projects that we think are good and that we want to move forward with. And at some point I will, ask us to take a vote on the motion and the second that we have on the floor. But I did want to throw that out there just to say, maybe we're breaking our own rules this one time, after we broke them last time too. Mike.
Madam Chair,
Mike, yeah.
is there any issue with the reporting for this?
Well, I think I did talk to Lynn about that, and they get a lot of federal grant money, right?
We
So
have federal and state grant money, and we're very used to reporting both financially and programmatically.
So I think even if we pass this through and the board passes it tomorrow, for Thursday, or whenever our next board meeting is, the money is not going to go out the door until our attorney figures out the contract documents, and they're going to have to report back to us about the spending. I don't see an issue. I just think it's going to be the normal government paperwork and red tape and all of that.
Yeah, it's part of the government paperwork and red tape. Do we have metrics associated with this? So if we split it across 2 years and we have 80,000, 60,000 this year, do we have some metrics attached to that to say we need to do more the following year or less the following year?
Larry, have you thought about this at all yet?
No, I think that's going to come out of the program details, not
Okay,
contract.
thank you.
Whatever is required to be reported will incorporate into the contract requirements. Or the grant requirements. I shouldn't say contracts.
Did you guys make any decisions about the computer money, for instance? Are they going to have to front that money and then we reimburse them, or no, we're just giving them the money?
No, we've made no decision on
Oh.
that. That I'm aware of.
Okay. We're still working out those details.
That's good.
Do you guys want me to call the question
Please.
and vote on it and see where it goes? Okay. All those in favor of moving forward with the $112,500 proposal from Southern Adirondack Child Care Network, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Great. Awesome.
Thank you very much for your time today and for the approval.
Yes, we'll figure it out more as we go forward.
That's just the first step.
That's just step one. And of course, the board, we'll see what the board does. It's up. This is a recommendation that we provide to the full Board of Supervisors. So hopefully they will take our recommendation seriously. I know they will. I know we will, and go forward from there. Ryan mentioned to me, just to try to make sure I've got consensus on, that we do on having Julie put out an RFP regarding the tourism idea solicitation and see what we get.
Yes. And maybe she can brainstorm other big picture ideas.
Okay.
I'm not sure how to do that. Maybe I can work with her. Maybe a few
I
others
think,
find-
yeah, talk to Ryan too. Thank you both for coming. Thanks, Liza. Thank you, Lynn.
Good job, ladies.
Okay, so I think we've got consensus there, Ryan. You'll talk to Julie and Mike will talk to her, and anything else? Anyone from the public want to speak before we adjourn? Go ahead.
Doug Miller, Adirondack Sports Complex. I don't envy your guys' position with trying to allocate these funds. I would ask that the committee do something to keep in mind. We have a very unique business, and many of you know that 11 years ago, we had a minor issue with the structure, which took us out of business. It was our third year in business. And we worked with our SBA agent and our primary loan folks. And it was during 83% of our revenue was generated November to March. And we lost a significant portion of that year. A lot was covered with insurance and business interruption claim. But we ended up falling, with the SBA's approval, more than 30 days behind on our SBA loan. When it came to COVID, we were shut down for 5 months, completely shut down because of the COVID restrictions. We went to apply for PPP, and one of the questions in PPP, have you ever been more, not in 6 months or 5 years, have you ever been more than 30 days behind on a government-backed loan? We honestly have to answer yes. That automatically disqualified us from PPP. We then looked at the next one that came in place was the arena and venue operators program. And we fall in that NAICS code, or if it's the right pronunciation, initials for it, but we fall in that code. We are an arena. We host events. We market those events. They then tightened that up, Congress did, that you had to have, and I've got those requirements here, that you had to have a ticket agent and you had to do advanced ticket sales. Well, we don't do advanced ticket sales and we don't have ticket agents. So that disqualified us from that part. We then looked at the restaurant revitalization program when that came into place. Okay, at least we can cover our grill and restaurant money or some of it. They then tightened that up and said it had to be, if you're a mixed business as we are, it had to be 33% of your total annual revenue. Well, our grill doesn't produce 33%. So we have been knocked out on all three of those. That's one whammy was the COVID. Second whammy was being disqualified. A third whammy was when we were allowed to reopen, the hotels, Lake George did great. Lake George could have people from anywhere in the country. Our business, sports businesses were restricted to, for the next 10 months, I could only have teams coming from the capital region. And as many of you know, page 5 in the interim guide for sports and recreation, as of July 6, 2020, in regions having reached or surpassed the phase 3 of the state's reopening in accordance with the guidelines, participants with low and moderate risk sports activities may partake in all types of play, except competitive tournaments requiring travel. We were knocked out of the box for another 9 months. I couldn't have teams from outside the area. we actually worked out a creative plan. I met with Ryan. We talked about it numerous times. We did something where, all right, I can't have, what we got for guidance was I can't have teams from Connecticut playing teams from the capital region. I couldn't have teams from Mohawk Valley. I couldn't have teams from Syracuse playing against other teams. So what we worked out was a pod structure. I'd have the capital region teams play amongst themselves. Then they'd leave, we'd disinfect, we'd have Hudson Valley teams. We then would have them leave. We would then have Syracuse or Buffalo teams. We would stay by regions. And then we would have one last one where we'd have the out-of-state teams. That was the only way we could structure it. And after being shut down for essentially 12 months because of these restrictions and then the original shutdown, we had the issue of the collapse last December 18th. I am not asking for any assistance of any kind that's related to the collapse. I'm looking for the committee to do something for businesses such as us that were shut down and had, because of the requirements, just we couldn't qualify for a single nickel. That period, we lost almost 42% of our total annual revenue. I would be, and anybody that you're going to do funding for, I think needs to verify this need. I don't want to put in public my P&L, but there's my P&L for the last 10 years showing what we've lost in that period. We got through COVID. We got to November of 2020. And I said, knock on wood, we're going to make it. We're going to be okay. We laid everybody off. Dennis was talking about hotels and motels where they're working 5-6 days a week. Well, my wife and I are working 7 days a week. I'm doing over 85 hours a week, 7 days a week since we had the collapse. We had to lay, when we had the collapse, we had to lay everybody off. The only people that are getting paid are our officials that are coming in to officiate our games and our coaches that are working 4, 5, 6 hours a week. We haven't taken a paycheck ourselves in over a year and a half. On the SBA site, I did a little homework the last couple of days. On the SBA site is all the PPP allocations that have been provided. They're huge files. Each one of these files, you got to find out where New York falls. They're over 400 meg files, and it took a while to download them and filter through. In New York State, PPP awards were a total of $56.8 billion. In Warren County, there have been 1,343 awards. I think that was the number. It was 1,300 something, totaling $188 million. I don't know if everybody knows that. Over 1,000 businesses have been funded through PPP in Warren County. We're not one of them. The average loan was over 180,000, or the average, well, they were loans. Of those so far, 147 million of them have been forgiven. So they've become grants. So I guess what I'm asking is the committee to keep in mind businesses such as ours. Also, there were some businesses that were talked about, non-for-profits that need some funds. The committee also needs to take a look and see whether they have been funded in any capacity. The restaurant revitalization, the arena and venue operators, and the PPP, every single loan. This is everyone in Warren County. This is what I've extracted out. And so I ask you just keep that in mind. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Doug.
Yes.
You bring up very important concerns. Dennis?
One other thing I'll mention too is in terms of tourism, county survives on tourism to a large extent. In the last 5 years, our tournaments, we generate more money per hotel than we get out of all of our tournaments in the winter. We've generated over $21 million using just the county's old economic impact figures. Those that are familiar with what Kristen Hannafin did and the software package that the county approved for her to purchase years ago, that gets in secondary and tertiary levels of impact. I'm not talking about anything other than a first level of impact. We provide over $21 million in the last 5 years.
Dennis?
Doug, Just for the record, you've submitted an application?
I did. The survey went out, from the county back, I think it was August, September. How do you think the recovery funds can be utilized, should be utilized? I filled out the survey, and I'll be honest, we are dead nuts to the wall all winter long, and we're just getting through our winter stuff now. And I saw in the paper, and when I can, I get a hold of the county minutes, and I watch the meetings when I can. And I did not put the acronym ARPA together with the Recovery Act funds. But I also had seen that everything is talked about government. We're going to do roads, we're going to do bridges, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And there was no talk about business. So I kind of felt that it was going to be a done deal, and businesses would not be addressed at all. In some conversations just the last week, and looking at some of the committee meetings, I see that there is a small discussion that happened in the last meeting about business. A lot of it got into the adult home center. And now there was much more today talk about business. So thank you for that.
Doug, my second question
So
is,
to answer your question, yes, after last week's meeting, yes, I did fill out this is a solicitation on the site.
and how much were you looking for?
I put in 200,000, and I put in that before looking at all the other 69 applications that were in there, or solicitations that were in there. And we're over $500,000 behind just on that 1 year.
Okay.
And again, I'm not asking for anything that is related to our loss of business from the collapse last December. This is all from 2020 that I'm talking about.
I think this is definitely falls in the category for the spending of the ARPA money. Mr. Miller has a significant business in Warren County, unfortunately in Queensbury. And they've done a great job bringing people in and from outside the area. And I really think we should strongly consider his request.
80% of my hotel occupancies are in Lake George.
Music to my ears.
There you go, Dennis. Doug.
Yeah. Your unique situation.
Absolutely.
You laid out the three possible areas that you could have gotten some funding. You didn't qualify for any of the three. Your business helps Warren County sales taxes and occupancy taxes probably more than any other event or business. And he documents that every single year. Now, does he get OC tax money? Yes. And it definitely is earned. The county rewards from this business being in business is humongous. And I'm not sure everyone understands that. It's the number one driver. The number one driver. If he goes out, okay, if he goes out of business, the impact on all of Warren County will be significant. And I'm not over embellishing, I'm not overestimating. So if you take out the lead dog, the rest of the pack runs amok. He's the lead dog, but he's very humble about what he brings to this county. He documents every room, every event. And like you said, 80% goes to you, Dennis, up in Lake George, the hotels. But
Don't quote me on the 80. It is in that. It is a very high percent.
so-
Majority are. But
I know it's a very unique situation. But I think we need to put our hats on and figure out how we can help the number one lead dog in this county stay the lead dog. So that's my 2 cents.
Is that a motion
to
for the
expand that.
200,000?
The dollar amount, I think we can have a discussion on $200,000 because it is the top dog in the county. To be frank with you, I don't think that's out of line.
I'll second that motion.
All right, I made the motion, you second it, okay.
Wayne.
I'm gonna be the naysayer here. And I don't say we shouldn't do something, but no one has seen this application. I haven't seen it. I don't know what the metrics are. I'm in favor of this, but I really think everybody should see the application. I haven't gotten that from online yet. I haven't provided it to you. I think this is a little early. I think next meeting we can make a decision on this when you're well informed. That's just my point of view.
Madam Chair, I agree.
Mike,
No, I agree. with
I saw your hand up.
I do agree. That's what I was going to imply. I'm not sure what the number is. I agree that the support is warranted,
Yes.
but I'm not sure what the number should be. And I'd almost looked at someone like our treasurer to say, help me figure out these numbers and what makes sense.
Treasurer.
I agree. I talked with Doug last week, I believe it was, and said, look, if anybody deserves help from this committee, it's you, because you fell through all the gaps. But we need to be on solid footing before we make the decision of having the application, looking at his money that he's requesting. Why is he requesting it? And we also have to have a mechanism for doing this. We don't have anything set yet to deal with private business. And I don't want to jump too, I don't want to hold up, and I don't want to do it too slow, but we've got to get everything in order for us to get it done correctly. That's my biggest concern, the mechanics of actually doing this, because Wayne and I are the ones that are involved with that. I want to make sure that's dead set on before we do anything.
If
Yep.
I can just chime in.
Just a second. I want to let
Sure.
Gene speak. Go ahead, Gene.
I'm not on the committee, but I know Doug a long time, and I've been voting for op tax for him for a long time, and his numbers are spectacular and well written out that you can look at it. So I would support what the talk is here for now tonight.
Doug. I'll go back to Doug and then I'll get you, Brad.
I honestly was surprised at the generality of the questions on the solicitation piece. And I kind of started by saying there needs to be mechanisms put in place so you're verifying who's asking for what. I read through all 69 of the solicitations that were in the minutes or the agenda for last month or last 2 weeks ago. And one of the questions is, are these directly a result of the pandemic? And everybody answered yes, or I think everybody answered yes. 80% of them were not anything driven by the pandemic. And that's got to be cleaned up. There needs to be more qualifying and questions and answers. And I can't state this enough. I am looking at just the things that impacted us in 2020 directly as a result of the pandemic. Stop period at the end of it in December of 2020. Everything after that that's ours.
Madam Chair.
And as I said before, I think that you're raising very good questions about businesses that are falling through the cracks and making sure that we are helping them through this grant business program that we're still trying to set up. Dennis, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, Doug, so are you happy with your application in response to the request from information here, or do you want to add to it?
I would love to recover all of the revenue we lost that year, which is significantly more than that. But at 200, we can get our lender back whole and yeah, 200 would be.
But you have the supporting documentation.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And again, that would be my P&Ls primarily, or my tax returns,
Yep.
which I would rather share in private than in public on YouTube.
Hold on, Rachel.
I was just gonna say, I've always been very impressed with all your applications, but when, one, I hope that the OpTax committee many members that are here will, consider full funding every time that you go to the OpTax committee. I know it's one of the best documented, I don't sit on that committee, but one of the best documented OpTax applications that we have. And I always wonder, when we're not awarding it to a full amount based on the criteria. So I keep coming back to the criteria because you follow the rules with OpTax and you look at, okay, here's how I'm going to be evaluated. So I think this is a great opportunity to take your feedback and to work on an application process that would also then allow you to modify your application to meet some of these additional needs that we've identified are applicable under ARPA. So, I think in the interest of having a all-inclusive application and one going through that metric policy, that rubric evaluation, it might be really helpful, and it might afford you an opportunity to reevaluate. Perhaps there's other areas that have a significant impact that you could be applying for. In the
Yes.
very near future, I
Yeah.
hope that this is something that, we'll continue to work on in the next week or so with a draft app. I know we've identified 3 or 4 different places where we aren't going to reinvent the wheel, but just tweak it. So this should be quick.
Thank you.
Dennis.
In light of these issues, I withdraw my second and look forward to getting back to this at our next meeting and moving forward with it.
Absolutely.
I withdraw my
Doug,
motion too.
Thank you.
Yep, let's just,
Okay. I'm sorry to cut you off.
yeah, I just had one other, how many rooms? I remember, my memory shot, we all
Room
get,
nights.
how many
We're-
room
we're-
nights? in
We're
a
doing
year?
on average, over 14,000
I
bed
put
nights a
the
year.
number I remembered, 14,000.
And our occupancy award, the room nights generate 4% revenue, tax revenue.
Right.
Our request each year is for less than 1% of that 4% that we generate.
14,000 rooms a year. There's no other driver in this county than that, bigger. I
May-
just want to leave. it
Maybe the hospital.
Well, the hospital,
I'm teasing.
you
I'm
mean,
teasing.
we're in the hospital? I've been in there. I'm a customer, a regular customer.
They're not necessarily coming because they want to, it's more because they have to.
Ray, can you get a room for me?
Mr. Miller, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We do appreciate your comments and we sympathize with the situation that you're in for sure. Frank, did you have anything?
Yeah, I think it would be to our best interest to search the Small Business Administration site and get the documents that Mr. Miller has put together there so that we can double check and see who got what.
I think that could be part of our process. Maybe he's willing to share the homework he's already done.
I spent basically the full day distilling all that. I'll be glad to share that.
I've got that note here.
Anything
Got it in spreadsheet.
further from the committee?
Well,
I'm sorry, Brad. Yes.
that's okay, Claudia. I've been overlooked before, but I am not on the committee. And but I will say I have followed Doug Miller and his, his progress and what he does for our county. And, I am in full support of, whatever we can do. I mean, 12 months without a paycheck due to this pandemic for what he has out there. And you just can't shut the door and turn off the fans. That just won't happen there. You can't do that. So, so I just wanted to say that, thank you all for, supporting, pulling it back. And I look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
I think we all do. Yes, Treasurer Swan.
Mr. Miller's situation is what I feel like this committee is supposed to be doing. If we're looking at funding or granting for private businesses, we need to focus on the ones that fell through the cracks. Those are the ones that need the most help. And one of the applications I saw, I don't know, it was Saratoga or Ulster or whatever, they asked point blank in there, have you received any other funds from any agency for anything related to the pandemic? And those are the ones that need to be pushed to the back burner, and the ones who have not received any funds at all need to be brought to the front.
Agree.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Dennis.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. And is there any discussion on our motion to adjourn? Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, everybody. Good job. Oh, we didn't pick a meeting date. Well.